A lot of people talk about despotism. They talk about rulers and authoritarians as if they necessarily would be bad. Well, then the only thing they can support their idea with is that those authoritarianists killed people. See, ignorance kills far more people than any authoritarian regime. If we look at the authoritarian regimes, we can look, for example, at Germany, the USSR, and obviously, let's say China. When you look at these people, the things that they have done outclass the idea that they have killed people. You have to understand, expecting people not to die in an authoritarian regime is kind of silly in the end. People will always die. You have to understand that in a society, in any system actually, not in a society, in any system, some things have to die sooner or later so that it functions. You don't believe me? Look at your immune system. Look at your physical body. Some things in your physical body will be killed because they are not wanted, they are not needed. But your physical body is not an authoritarian regime. It doesn't impose anything on your own cells, but it is automatically defending itself when it finds something that is not good. A very treacherous way of conquering a nation is by infiltrating it and overthrowing its government, learning its traditions, and harming it from inside. It takes a lot of time and patience, yes, but it will always be far more effective than wasting years, fighting off an enemy and using weapons of destruction. If you overthrow their government and overcome that country, you take it with everything it has without any damage. When you look at Hitler and Stalin, they both were put by the ancestors of the Zionists of today, and both were taken out by them because they were not that much pro their own system. They were for their own countries, and Zionists don't like people who are nationalistic. They tell you that Stalin is, someone who died of age, but he died poisoned by some people who disagreed with him. The history is somewhat contorted, but when you look at Germany, it became quite a powerhouse under Hitler's regime. Why? Because, well, he prohibited the idea of interest, which collapsed the banks who belonged to the enemies of his country. And, well, not enemies because he would call the Jews. Many of the people who were ruling those banks were part of the Zionist system. They were not necessarily Jewish people. There were also people who, some of them were people who acted as Jewish people because they wanted to hide behind that identity. But things are way more complicated. When you look at Stalin, yes, obviously a lot of people died. The USSR is obviously the champion of human life losses when it comes to World War II. And a lot of people also died. A lot of people were killed by the system because, well, it's an authoritarian regime. No one can come and say, hey, but people died. It's an authoritarian regime. People die even nowadays. They died throughout the pandemic and they were buried and no one ever heard about them. And, well, you call this modern world, you call it a democracy. So people died in this pandemic and, well, in other accidents as well. There have been a lot of situations where hunger was caused throughout the world. Even some of the meteorological events are caused by certain powers, right? And it's quite certain no one needs any more proof nowadays because when you see meteorological events that never happened before somewhere and then they suddenly happen there, it's kind of peculiar, right? And then everywhere you look in the world, the mass media tells you the same exact thing. It's like, some things don't click here. So when you look at Stalin, well, if you look at the USSR or Russia as it was before, it was a country with a huge population. Many of them were illiterate. After the socialist age or throughout the socialist age, a lot of people actually ended up having slightly or somewhat better lifestyles. Yes, an authoritarian regime is never a good thing in the end because, well, a lot of freedoms are prohibited and as such. Many people suffer. But you can see that the USSR simply rose like a phoenix from the, um, I can easily say, the ruin that it once was. And then it ended up slowly and surely the superpower that it is today. Whether it is stronger or weaker than USA or China, we can't care much, or at least I can't care that much. It is their problem, it is their struggle, not mine. When you look, for example, at China, China will have two big saints, and I think they will always have these two saints forever and ever. When you speak about China's history, you speak about Sun Quan, the emperor, obviously, the one who, if I remember correctly, united or created the foundation of a unified China. After the fight of the three kingdoms ended, and I think he was the one who united them somewhat. He defeated the other two kingdoms with the help of very strong and capable people. And he did take a lot of good measures in society and did a lot of good things for his own people. And well, that will, I think, I sure hope it will keep him as a saint in the Chinese people's minds and consciousness. Then you look at a more controversial figure, which is Mao Zedong. I think it's pronounced like this. Well, another authoritarian regime that led to the death of a lot of people. But, well, many of these people, just like, for example, in Russia, they were their own country. This happened before, Russia's becoming offensive, let's say. But history was what it was. It was a war, so obviously a lot of people were prone to die, especially collateral damage, right? As the Americans call the victims of their indiscriminate bombings. Or, well, the people behind America. Let's not call it America. The people behind America. And when you look in the world, they're not the only country that does that. There are obviously other examples because we are still led by ignorant people, apathic people who can't take into account their own life or the importance of life. So to them, taking someone else's life is nothing else. It is nothing special. To some, it even becomes something special. To some, even it becomes a sport. So the question is, why would you expect such people to, lead you? Have you ever wondered why we have leaders? Well, leader is someone who has to rule the people, but a leader has to lead people who are capable. If people are incapable, a leader is not good because a leader won't have what to rule. You can't rule over molds because a mold is easily shaped into whatever you want, right? Ignorant people are just like that. They are just like a mold. It's waiting for someone to shape it into something else. If you don't fight for something that you like, if you don't live life and accomplish something that you like, someone else will hire you to accomplish their dreams. So when it comes to Mao Zedong, one of his greater accomplishments, or probably the greatest in the world, is that he managed to put, as per the statistics say, around 1 billion people out of poverty. Well, a certain type of poverty. He created and built a lot of schools, allowing people to learn and become much better, become more capable in life, rather than just being simply, illiterate masses that can't do anything, can't fend for themselves, and don't have any sense with life as is. Yes, it was an authoritarian regime. A lot of people died. But come to think of it, an authoritarian regime, in the end, in any country, is like a cytokine storm in the physical body, which is an event that is triggered by the body when it feels threatened and it feels it can no longer contain a certain disease, and it launches all its defensive mechanisms at once. It causes a lot of collateral damage, and strangely, it is said that the healthier the system is, the more damage it does also to itself. And then when you look at a society, obviously the greater its population, the more people may die. May, not necessarily that they have to or whatever. It is not decided by me. So putting 1 billion people or somewhere around that of people out of poverty, giving them electricity, giving them access to better means of life, I would say that is a huge achievement. So I'm not sure if I'm going to rush in saying that despots and authoritarianists are necessarily bad. Always take into account what they have done for their people, because in most situations they will do good for their people, but they're not going to do too good for the others around. Hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You are appreciated. Take care, enjoy life, and this being said, Ferencan Board signing out.